Hello, team. Good evening. Today is a very special day. We have as a guest Professor Dae Ryun Chang. Professor Chang is leading professor at the State University of New York in Korea. He spent 35 years as professor of marketing at Yonsei School of Business. Also, he received his doctorate from Harvard University, his MBA from Columbia University, and his Bachelor in Communication from the University of British Columbia. A former dean of the Graduate School of International Studies at Yonsei University, he has held visiting faculty appointments at Helsinki School of Economics, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and also the Australian National University, among Singapore Management University. Even some other universities as Nanyang Technology University, and was a visiting scholar at Columbia University, University of Vienna, and University of St. Andrews. So, as you could imagine, Professor Chang has a very international background, and he had the opportunity to collaborate with many institutions around the world. His research interests lie in the integrated brand communication, including film narrative effects, also corporate social responsibility, with the specific publications in management science, Journal of Marketing, Psychology and Marketing, the Journal of Product Innovation Management, and Journal of Business Research. He has developed 7 massive online open courses on the Coursera platform with over around 70,000 learners. As part of his interdisciplinary research, he also makes narrative and documentary shorts that have been screened at international film festivals. So please join me to welcome Professor Chang. Thank you again.
Why marketing? Many of you may have already taken a course in marketing, but even if you have or have not, I will introduce you to a core concept called Nopi, which forms a key essence of what marketing means. Nopi is what we have to do because we have to match the levels of not only the eyes, but also the minds and also the hearts of consumers.
So welcome again, everybody. And as I mentioned, we have a very special guest today. It's evening in Mexico, but it's morning in South Korea. So we have Professor Dae Ryun Chang. So it's a great pleasure to have you here, Professor. And as a quick introduction, would you mind to share us a little bit about you and mainly about your current activities right now? So welcome again, and thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be with Professor Fernando Sierra. And I am a professor at the State University of New York in Korea. Until early this year, I had been a professor at Yonsei University, which is one of the top universities in Korea. We like to say that it is the top, but there's always this rivalry that we have with Seoul National and Korea University. So I was there for about 35 years, so a long, long time at Yonsei. And I had been a professor who taught courses, mostly related to marketing. But one of the topics that we'll talk about today is filmmaking, because I am also a filmmaker. And so of late, I think for about the past 10 years, maybe the most popular course at Yonsei, and I think it may be the only course taught in the whole world, I may be mistaken, on filmmaking. So, excuse me, I'm getting some messages, but so I'll ignore that. I hope the sound didn't sound off. But so anyway, I was teaching a course on filmmaking to the MBA. So I think it's normal for filmmaking to be taught at a film school. but it's my belief, and it's reflected in my Coursera courses. If I can plug my Coursera courses, I teach 6 of them, including one in Spanish.
Yes.
And so I urge you to take them. So yeah, so I teach filmmaking, and I talk a lot about filmmaking because I think there's a lot more to learn when we cross industries, which is a major theme of my Coursera courses, because I think if you just stick to one industry, it's very dangerous.
Absolutely.
Because you never know where the competition is going to come from. Usually it's from a different industry. And B, you limit yourself in terms of what you can learn. So I have learned so much about marketing, ironically, through my filmmaking.
Yes.
So I wanted to impart that to my MBAs. There's so much about filmmaking that we don't know. We only see the movie, but what goes behind on how the film is made, it requires management. So in terms of what I'm doing of late, I'm doing a lot of research and teaching on filmmaking. So that will be one of the topics that we will cover today. And I'm also interested in corporate social responsibility, the notion that companies can be very pro-social and still be sustainable. So you don't have to be a company that only makes money. You don't have to be a company that is nonprofit. No, you can be both. But how to do that? Now that is the challenge. It's not easy. So that is why there's a lot of research being done on CSR. And I'm kind of marrying what I've been doing with filmmaking and seeing how filmmaking can help companies bridge the gap in being a more sincere company and a believable, a so-called authentic company, because there's a lot of backlash. People say that, oh, it's fake, it's greenwashing, so on and so on. But again, it's really about how to convey the sincerity of what it is you're trying to do.
Absolutely, and to be honest, it's a great approach. Filmmaking, it's like, for example, let's go to a foundational activity. When we used to teach in an MBA how to make even a PowerPoint, it is something that for many people could sounds trivial, but to be honest, it is the most effective way to communicate in a good way. But filmmaking is, let's say, it's an additional step, because
a whole different level. It's a whole
absolutely absolutely. And you are right. For example, as we were discussing previously outside cameras, with the situation that we live with in the last years, I needed to start making my interviews online. So I discovered that I needed a lot to learn how to make it, how to manage the time, and also even the different contexts. So you are absolutely right. This is a very important aspect to consider. So as you said, we are going to talk a little bit more about this later. So Professor, about one of your main expertises is about the marketing in Asia. And for sure, for me, Asia is a wonderful case of study, because there is not just an Asian market. We have different economies with very different behaviors. The rules are different country by country. So in your book, Mastering Nopi, The Art and Science of Marketing in Asia, which I deeply recommend to the students.
Thank you.
do you provide a really good angle in a kind of customer-centric conversation?
Mhm.
And to be honest, maybe before this term start to be used worldwide, you were one of the beginners about this kind of approach. So
Yeah.
which was the business case inspired you to write this book? Specifically talking about the reason why you decided to make this deeply research about this interesting topic.
Yeah. I think if I can just add a little more about my background,
Sure.
I was born actually in Taiwan, but I left when I was maybe 3 months old. So I'm Korean, but my father was a diplomat.
Mhm.
So we used to travel everywhere. So I think he eventually served in 8 different countries.
Wow.
But I got to live in 5 of them. So I lived in many different countries. So traveling has always been part of my life. So even though I'm ethnically Korean, in terms of my cultural upbringing, I am much more multicultural, even though I am ethnically Korean. So I thought when I came back to Korea to teach after my studies in the US, I found it interesting, almost sad to see that even in Korea, they were teaching just using Kotlin. And it's still the same, still the same.
I could
And
imagine.
I'm sure this is like that everywhere.
Yes.
So there's not a single book written, not even in Korean. Think about this, let alone English, about marketing in Korea, which is shocking because markets such as Korea or Japan and China and Singapore, which I go to a lot, and other parts of Asia, they are very different from markets not only in the West, but even between themselves, they are different. And yet, you'll be hard pressed to find books about marketing in Japan. Just go on on Amazon or Google, marketing in Japan. You'll find maybe one title. The same with China, same with Korea, which is maybe my book. My book is the only book on marketing in Korea. So this had been brewing for a while. So that's when I finally decided, no, I think someone has to take a stand and say that marketing in different regions is different. Finally, we arrived at a point where Asia now is maybe 60% of global marketing activity. This is where it's happening because we have the number of people. We always have the number of people because of China. But China now has money. Japan always had money. Korea has a lot of money. Singapore is the richest country in the world in terms of per capita income.
Absolutely. Yep.
So we not only have the number of people, we have spending power. So that is why brands everywhere, not just in Asia, but brands from the West have started taking notice. So for them to come in and just try the same old marketing 101, like Walmart did, like all the other brands that failed in Asia did, it's only logical for them to fail because, again, the situation here is very different.
Completely different.
And it's not just culture. Actually, I'm not a big proponent of this concept of culture. So I try to be very careful when I talk about culture because sometimes culture is this convenient fall guy that you use when you don't know why something is not working. But if you dig in more deeply, you'll find that it's because of most often distribution. Distribution, I think, is a key variable
Yes.
because it speaks to the infrastructure of a country. And the reason why a lot of countries, excuse me, a lot of companies fail is because they assume that the distribution infrastructure of a country
Yes.
will be very similar to that back home. So an example which comes to mind might be Domino's Pizza. And they might assume that, traffic conditions in Korea will be the same as it is in Detroit, only to find that you have traffic jams and it's worse than if you go to Bangkok. So to promise that you'll deliver a pizza within 30 minutes, that's impossible.
Absolutely.
Impossible. And to try to do it with the car, again, even worse yet. So they have to use what's faster, such as using a motorcycle in many countries in Asia, including Korea. So Korea still is a big user of motorcycles to deliver. And so again, culture is only a small part of why a lot of companies fail. So this is a long answer to your question. What motivated me to write this book is just to make people aware of why you have these differences. But you also have a lot of similarities. So I think the challenge for marketers is to not be simplistic. They have to do their homework and see what can be transferred to the country without changing it, but what has to be changed. So it's like a recipe. So where, again, you keep a lot of things the same, but even with food, when you go to a different country, you have to change things because of the temperature, because of the water, so on and so on. Sometimes you don't have the ingredients that you can easily find back home. So you have to substitute that with other ingredients.
Yes.
So the mixing and matching, I think that is a good rule to have in mind when you're doing international marketing.
Yeah, absolutely, because we could notice specifically, for example, in Central America, we could say, okay, culturally are countries that are so similar than Mexico. However, if we consider the logistic component, they are better connected with Miami than with Mexico City, for example.
Absolutely.
Those kind of touch points are the ones that we need to be aware, because it is not just about how we are going to be successful in the way that we are going to offer the products, but also a big issue here is the cost and how it could diminish the profit. And that's the reason that we have some businesses that they prefer to leave the countries, because it is not sustainable for the business strategy that they have worldwide.
No, not at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Professor, in your Coursera specialization, you talk about the impact that marketing has in a wide quantity of industries. But for example, you used to talk about entertainment, sports, hospitality. And what do you think, in general, which are the main differences you see between how those industries that are service-centric are promoted in Asia versus in Western Hemisphere, for example?
Oh, great question. And because that module on service marketing, it's taught by actually a colleague of mine. But my thinking about service marketing has always been and this is where the concept of Nopi, for those of you who haven't taken my Coursera courses, Nopi means the eye level of the consumer. So the philosophy that I always preach about how to succeed in not only marketing, but even filmmaking is to understand the eye level. So it could be physical, the eye level, but normally when I say eye level, I'm talking about the expectations or the perspective that a consumer has. So answering your question, service companies from abroad have often failed in Asia, especially in Korea. And the reason for that is because of Nopi, because the expectation level, and this actually ties in very well with the logistics that I talked about before. So just to give you an example, there's, I don't get paid by them, so I can mention them. So this is just my opinion, but there's a brand called Market Curly. And it's like Amazon. It's not #1 in Korea, but it is a online delivery company. And they have targeted especially women of all ages, but especially women in their 20s, 30s, who are very busy. So what they do, which is incredible, which is mind-boggling, is at no additional cost. So this has been their point of difference. This is how they have differentiated themselves as a latecomer. And it helps that the CEO, the founder of this company herself, it's a woman who can see eye to eye. And it's a young woman. So it started as a startup. I think she was like 30, early 30s. And just in like 4 or 5 years, it's grown to be one of the top, I think maybe the 3rd or 4th largest online e-commerce company in Korea. They deliver, and we did this. I mean, just 2 days back, I wanted to make a Greek watermelon salad. So I was asking my wife, but we don't have any pita bread. So she said, pita bread, I'm sure many of you know, are like tortillas in Mexico. So Coupon, I looked it up, said we can deliver the tortilla, no, excuse me, the pita bread the next morning. And this was like 10 p.m.
Wow.
So we put in the order and it's waiting for us when we get up at 7 a.m.
Wow.
Think about this. And we didn't have to order that much. So the minimum ordering side wasn't that much. So this is the Nopi of Koreans. So they're used to this. You go to a bank, they expect not to wait any more than 5 minutes at a bank.
Incredible.
To give you a comparison, I mentioned Singapore. And in Singapore, I apologize to any Singaporeans watching this. You're great friends of mine. I love Singapore. But I hate the fact that in Singapore, you have to wait often, an hour to get service if you don't have an appointment. In Korea, you don't need an appointment. You can just walk in and bang, within 5 minutes, someone will serve you. So if I can cut to the chase, in Korea, the Nopi is so high. And again, it's related to service. It's because of the infrastructure of delivery systems.
Sure.
And it's also related to the internal infrastructure of how people are trained within a bank, other financial institutions,
Mhm.
where if there's a bottleneck, well, then the managers, they will come and serve. So there's no, it's not as if the managers will always say, oh, I'm just a manager. No, it's like Tony Fernandez of AirAsia. And there's a famous example of him. He's the CEO, the founder, of him going down to the terminal and working as the baggage handler. The
Okay.
CEO,
Yeah.
he's doing that. And it's not just a show. It's not just for photo ops.
I could imagine.
So the executive will come down and help, because the thing about service is that people have to do it.
Absolutely.
So a key word that I use in my Coursera course is flexibility. So good companies, they have to be flexible, especially nowadays because of the pandemic. Because
Sure.
a lot of the old rules about how to do things, they went out the window.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, so now you have to be very nimble and adjust to the new reality of how to serve customers, not only offline, but online. And if you need people, again, you can outsource them, but the problem with outsourcing is that it takes time and there's no control or less control. So internally, this is why you really have to be very resilient, resourceful. These are other terms that have cropped up because of the pandemic: resourcefulness, resiliency. But I think they all relate to flexibility. Companies can't be rigid, especially these days.
Yes.
Given all the new kinds of constraints that companies face.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a kind of egalitarian approach that maybe is more common in European countries, but it's something that in one way or another, we need to adapt for organizations to be sure that we have that kind of impact that you mentioned. So absolutely. And Professor, in the case of when we used to talk about Asia, for sure, maybe I have a question that maybe you could help me. Which countries do you think could have a better economic integration between them in the near future, mainly to compete for frontally, for example, versus China?
Especially FTAs, free trade agreements.
Yeah.
And I was very pleasantly surprised to see just this past week, Mexico and Korea signed a FTA. They finally signed it. They signed it.
Yes.
So this was last week. So
and by the way, Professor, sorry to interrupt you, but here in Monterrey, that I'm from, we have a lot of Korean colleagues from you, and also a lot of Korean companies, because here we have, for example, Kia Motors, Samsung, Hyundai factories. So there is a big Korean community here in Monterrey, and
good to hear.
And we have some.
And a lot of them were started because of the NAFTA.
Yes.
This was their entry into NAFTA.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that you're right. This FTA has a few days that have been signed in a formal way, but they had been started working on it for, I would say, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and the same with the one with the Mercosur. So that I think will be signed soon as well. So I think they're headed in the right direction, because I see this as being one of the biggest challenges for not only Korea, but also other companies dealing with China. I think for a while, it's been easy. I think easy is, it's a dangerous word because you don't want things to be easy in life.
Yes.
Because you get complacent, you don't grow. And even
Absolutely.
at my age, I feel that I can grow. And that's why I'm learning Italian
Awesome.
to grow. And the fact that I speak Spanish helps because, as you know, the syntax is the same. Of course, there are a lot of differences.
Absolutely.
But culturally, the Spanish-speaking countries, Spain, let's say, and Italy are very different in terms of their style and so on. So I wanted to learn more about the Italian culture, and that's why I'm taking Italian. Going to say was a country is like a company, and companies, when they don't diversify, that's dangerous. And Korea, originally it was Japan, then it was the US, and then it was China. They took the easy way out, but there are a lot of red flags concerning the US for Korea. And there are even maybe more red flags concerning China for Korea. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that Korean companies will have, trying to distance or lower their dependency on China. And I think it stems from not just business or economics, but politics. I hate politics. As a person, I hate, and I'm sure your school is like that. Even schools are political. Schools are political. All organizations are political. But branding, marketing should not be political. But
Absolutely.
unfortunately, the politics nowadays they're creeping into how companies are marketed. I mean, there's so many examples to speak of. All the Chinese brands have been negatively impacted because what's going on between China and everyone.
Yes.
China is now the whipping boy. And I feel sad for all these Chinese brands like Alibaba, like Huawei, and they become victims. Of course, maybe they did something wrong, but again, one would guess it was at the behest of what the government has wanted from their companies. So their brands have been tarnished abroad, not because of what they have done, but because of what China is doing. So politics do matter in marketing. That is another topic, which I don't think is seldomly discussed. And even Japan, as someone who has worked with a Japanese company, they too have been impacted. So
that's
I
right.
think that's something that maybe a lot of your students will not know, but the last maybe decade or so has been a very bad time in terms of relationships between Korea and Japan, Korea and China. And so I think ultimately it has negatively impacted a lot of the brands. because when China says Korea culture is invading China, which they did, well then there was more control on the kind of cultural content, such as K-pop and K-drama, that could go into China. Same with Japan. And as a movie maker, I feel that it's so sad because I love Chinese movies. I love Japanese movies. But maybe more so before, because even the content of a lot of these movies, especially from China, is much more, again, if you have Chinese students, I apologize, but again, it's not as balanced as before in terms of what the content is. I think it's much more, propaganda might be a strong word, but again, it is maybe just unidimensional. Let me use that word, unidimensional, in the kind of message that they're trying to send.
Yes, yes, I could imagine. So for sure, there are a lot of challenges in that specific field, but you know, there are in those challenges, as you mentioned, we don't want the easy things because it will make us to do not go further. So for sure, there are so many battlegrounds to conquer. And so thanks so much, Professor. And one of the main fields that you are working right now, and you have a very interesting paper, is about how background music impact in diversity groups. So for me, it's interesting the different relation that you find between how the social enterprise use marketing and the different challenges that they used to have. It reminds me a little bit about some B2B companies, because at the end of the day, the budgets is a kind of limitations in B2B companies, especially when we are talking about marketing. So would you mind to share a little bit about some of the findings that you have from this analysis that you have been working?
Sure. Just to give you a little backdrop, I am a filmmaker. I've made 4 films, and so as a director, and I write my own scripts. When you write a script, then you think about all the different things that will be added on later. So not only during production, where you have acting and lighting and so on, but also in post-production, where you have editing going on, you have coloring going on, and a particular interest of late has been the music that is put in. So it's like marketing in many respects, because filmmaking is about storytelling, and marketing should be about storytelling. It's about trying to send a message about a product, about a company. And so in marketing, we always talk about concept, and then which is what the message is about, and but the concept only remains a concept unless it's supported by strategy, and especially by good action. So in that respect, it's filmmaking, because in filmmaking we talk about vision, which is what the message of the director is. Then we talk about ultimately action. So a good movie is where the vision and the action are aligned. It's seamlessly integrated. But a poor movie is where regardless of the great vision that the director had, if it's not implemented with proper action, and again, I remind your viewers that it's not just about the acting, but it's also about all the little different things that go into the making of the movie, such as the lighting, the editing, and music. So that's what I have been trying to do some research on, because on the set or in post-production, I'm heavily involved with the editor. When he's making the cuts, I'm there with him. So even though I'm not the editor, so I rely on experts. He says, I'm going to do it this way. And then I tell him, maybe that's not consistent with what I'm trying to convey. And I do the same with my composer. And I'm very meticulous. So because I actually do a temp scoring. These are all industry jargon, but what temp scoring means is I download something on, let's say, YouTube, and then I just put it in various parts of the movie. So I score my movie just to get a rough sense of how it will feel. And then I send it over to my composer. So all of my movies have original soundtrack. So he gets a sense of what it is I'm trying to do. And then he composes his own music and comes back to me about whether or not I like it, whether or not it conforms to the kind of message, the tone. It's not only the message, but it's also the tone of what it is I'm trying to say. So in my last research, which I hope you can tell your students how to find it.
Absolutely.
I was dealing with this. It was a documentary that I had made, and it was well received. And there were a lot of choices that I had to make. And one of those choices was concerning the music. And I was happy with the music. It was composed by this composer in the US. In a way, this is kind of related to what we were talking about before. We started a documentary. He is in New York. So we did a Zoom talk, but there are a lot of filmmaking specific software where we can actually do something like this and actually compose. So he will put in the music, and I will know the timeline of when it starts and when it ends, and whether there's a fade out at the end. So it's very technical. And I got the hang of it very fast. So I will tell him, no, the fade out is too long. Let's make it shorter, and so on and so on. So I made this film, and I wanted to test out from a theoretical basis, as well as a empirical basis, whether my choices had been correct. Because my vision for this movie, and it involved this disabled worker. And I had mentioned before that I'm interested in CSR. So it's about this company where they only employ mentally, developmentally disabled people. So normally these are people who have IQs lower than 7.
Okay.
So I made this movie. And so in the movie, I used what I thought was inspiring music. So I use it in my classes, and I'll be more than happy to send you the link to that film. I also have a case on this company. So the difference between the case and the movie is, whereas in the case, they talk about the employees as a group. And in this film, I wanted to make it personal. What I wanted to see, so I asked the company, is there someone that I can just highlight? And his name is Ji-hoon.
Okay.
And so I interviewed him, and he was very articulate. And I was actually very surprised with the content of the interview, because he's a young man, and he was very honest, and he knew so much about how this brand was marketed, because he was telling me not just about how the cookies are baked,
Mhm.
but he was telling me about one of his wishes was that more people would check out the website, the homepage, and read all the comments. And it was shocking. It was an eye-opener. So the thing about filmmaking is that often it's really about the filmmaker learning about some subject matter. A lot of research goes into the making of a film, because a film has to be authentic. So whatever film I make, I do a lot of research. So this is where my professorial training actually helps, because of the research I've been doing for 30 years.
Yes.
So research is not a problem for me. So I just do a lot of research, sometimes qualitative research. So I did the research for this film, but still, it hadn't prepared me for my conversations with Ji-hoon. And I was shocked. It floored me that he knew about websites and word of mouth, and he's using all these terms and the brand and so. So I had underestimated him just because he was labeled developmentally disabled. So it motivated me to make this
Absolutely.
film, to show people that they're normal. They're normal.
Absolutely.
So in fact, some of them are geniuses, as you know. A lot of autistic people have very high IQ, but they only
Yes.
just can do one thing, like in Rain Man.
Yes.
So he was not a Rain Man, but nonetheless, in terms of baking, he was an expert. He was an expert. So I made this film to see whether there might be parasocial identification. And it's a term
Mhm.
that we use in marketing, which gets at whether people can identify with themselves, see
Mhm.
themselves through someone. Usually it's talked about with celebrities, like with movie stars, or with professional athletes like LeBron James, or maybe Cristiano Ronaldo.
Mhm.
But here we're talking about someone who is disabled.
Mhm.
So I wanted to see, even for people, and he tells people in the film flat out, I am developmentally disabled. But despite that, through what he says about his goals in life, of
Mhm.
wanting to do well and making this company do well, and training other bakers and be a role model. That was so inspiring. And also, when something is sad, when they overcome that sadness, that's when they can be maybe more positive. So I use sad music, and I use both predictions that it would help, but it would also not help. And we found out that it had the opposite effect as compared to the inspiring music. That instead of promoting parasocial identification, which it did not, it actually promoted pity.
Okay.
And so, which is great, because that was the finding that I was hoping for, because I don't want people to pay these people. So that is the last thing
Yes.
that I want. So what this, from a practical standpoint, tells me is that if I want people to be, if I want them to see themselves as him, to elevate the viewer,
Absolutely.
it should be inspiring music, which is what we did. So it confirmed to me that the movie that I made was made in the right way, including in terms of the music used. Because a lot of times when you make a film about disabled people, they use sad music. They use sad music. And it promotes maybe the stereotype about disabled people,
Yes.
that they're not like us. Because my agenda is promoting inclusivity, not just diversity, but inclusivity.
Absolutely.
They're part of us. They're like us. And the thing about
Absolutely.
disability is that none of us are free from becoming a disabled person, either by age or an unexpected accident. It's not something that you're born with, a lot of people.
Absolutely. A random disease. So.
Yeah. So a visiting scholar in Scotland at the University of St. Andrews. So I was actually visiting in the film studies department, and one professor showed this project by Gael Garcia Bernal. He's a very famous actor and director. Yes. He's very close with Diego Luna, who I like. Anyway, so he made a movie called Who is Diane Cristal? Who is Diane Cristal? It's a documentary. Again, it's one way to check whether my bias as a filmmaker, because we all have a bias. Professors have a bias, because what we want to teach, again, a lot of it is just us. Yes. So that's why we have to read teachers' evaluations to verify whether we're making contact with our.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this was a very interesting cause, because there's a serious illegal immigration border crossing that's still going on, and we only recently found out about the 50 people who died in that truck. It's very sad.
Absolutely.
And this movie talks about that, but from their Nopi, not the Nopi of Texas Rangers in the U.S.
Yes.
But this one. Who went, I think it was from Guatemala, or it was some,
yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and you're right, Professor, because this also used to happen with, as you mentioned, with music is one of the components that used to make this kind of stereotypes of different cultures or different group of people. But also, for example, even the illumination and the photography of the films, that's another aspect that sometimes used to be used without the new Nopi scope. And we could see, for example, if Latin America countries are in a Hollywood movie, you could see a sepia tone or a shiny tone if there are European countries. So even that kind of perspective make a kind of distortion in the audience.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. And even the portrayal, I think sometimes I cringe. I mean, I've watched Narcos and I've watched Ozark. And and again, I mentioned Diego Luna, who's I think one of the producers of Narcos, and so it's
I
based
think
on
so.
fact.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's based on fact, but sometimes, I mean, as a filmmaker, there's a key word called representation. So representation is about, again, how someone is shown and whether that is authentic. And so maybe that is one part of what's going on, but certainly the danger is that people may generalize from that to everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think even if it's true, and I doubt it's all true, you need balance. You need balance.
Yes, that's why that when we had the opportunity to know different cultures, to go to different countries, we see a very different reality that the preconception that we used to have, and that's why it's so enriching this kind of conversation. And Professor, before we finish, there is also another topic that is one of the hard topics that you are focused right now. You also wrote about it, about the marketing spotlight, about the men's beauty industry. And for sure, this is a very important topic in South Korea. And in your findings, what do you think is the main difference about why this is very different, for example, what is happening in South Korea, for example, in the case of Latin America, or even in the United States? And because, for example, I don't see there is a religion issue, considering there is a lot of Catholics and Christians in South Korea. So I don't see that as a kind of situation that could make an important differentiation. But you are the expert on this topic. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, if I can give you like the 5-10 minute version of this, because it's actually a very complex topic. But I think what is very clear is that more men are now using cosmetics. It's a fact of life. And even though I think it may be more serious in Asia, and I'll get into the reasons why it may be, it's happening elsewhere. So you can Google male beauty or male grooming. And what will surprise you is that it's growing out, I mean outside of Asia. So even in Europe especially, but eventually in the US, and eventually in Latin America, you'll see that more and more men will be paying attention to so-called grooming and male beauty. And what that means is that it's not just the use of shaving products and skin products, but even makeup.
Okay.
So even in Europe, men are using eye products, lip products. They're using twin cakes, or they're also called cushions. They're using serums. Some are getting even cosmetic surgery. So this market is growing. It's depending on the source that you cite, it's anywhere from 30 to 75 billion. And it's projected to double within the next decade. So it's a huge market. And so where Asia comes in is that Asia is one of the biggest markets, because obviously we have China and India. But a more interesting country is Korea. And I can summarize why Korea is important with just one word: BTS. So, and the reason why Europeans have gotten into the act is also BTS. So they are, what's driving this market is, the keyword is new aesthetics about masculinity.
Mhm.
So whereas the old macho man would be someone who is hairy and has not only a mustache but also a beard, and he's wearing something like a torn shirt and a blue jeans. The Marlboro Man. If you're probably too young to remember the Marlboro Man. So he was the iconic
Yes, 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 yes.
cowboy macho man. Nowadays, again, BTS,
Mhm,
they become icons
mhm.
uh,
Worldwide.
representing worldwide,
Yes.
worldwide, for representing someone who is comfortable in their own skin. And I
Mhm.
think it's a new definition of masculinity, because I think it's the woman who decides what is masculine, actually, not the man.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so if women want that in a man, that's what men will strive for. So a
Yeah.
flower boy,
Mhm.
if women want that, that's what men will try to. They'll do their Brazilian wax. They'll not only here but down everywhere,
Yeah.
and they'll put makeup on their eyes, on their lips, and so on. So, in my case, I mentioned that Korea leads in the number of grooming products used. And I was shocked to read that the average is 14. So their so-called regimen is 14. So if that's an average,
Wow.
of course, you'll have people who use less than 14, but you'll have people who use maybe like 20 plus items per
Wow.
day, per day. So, and they're not cheap. They're not
Yes.
cheap. They're not cheap, because a lot of them are foreign brands.
Mhm.
So I think that's the thing that you need to be aware of, that the definition of masculinity and how it's portrayed is changing. So
Yes.
David Beckham was the outlier, the so-called metrosexual outlier.
Mhm.
But now that symbol, that iconic representation may be found by someone here in Asia. So just to give you an example, Chanel launched their new makeup line for men, and they used the Korean actor whose
Okay.
name is Lee Dong-wook. Lee Dong-wook. And he had appeared
Yeah,
in,
that's right. Yep.
yeah, something called Goblin.
Yes.
So I know it's,
I saw the full series.
like, Goblin. So Goblin,
Yes.
it also stars Kong Yu, who I like very much, but Lee Dong-wook now is the face of Chanel, not just
Okay.
for Korea,
Yes.
not just for Asia, but for the whole world.
Yeah, I saw some ads from
Yeah,
him with Chanel.
yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Even I saw in a TV channel from Spain. So imagine. So yeah, this worldwide. Yeah.
Yeah, it's worldwide.
Yeah.
So and all the Korean shows that I'm not sure which ones you're watching nowadays, but if you look closely, you'll see foreign brands being placed. So product placement
Mm-hmm.
being used in Korean shows. So again, it gets that so-called lead market. So Korea is a
Yes.
lead market. It's an opinion leader.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so what happens in Korea will happen everywhere, not just in terms of cosmetics, but also in fashion and
That's
so
right.
on. So a lot of Korean brands like Gentle Monster, which is an eyewear company. They're very gender neutral as well.
Okay.
They're either being acquired by the likes of LVMH or Richemont, these brand houses,
Yep.
but they're also have these collaborations where they will collaborate with Korean companies just so that they can promote the Korean influence on their products targeted to men, and in some cases women. But again, this is a global phenomenon. It's a worldwide phenomenon. So let me end on a key concept called gender neutral marketing. And so this is what's happening now.
Yes.
Not just in cosmetics, but across a lot of industries where they're testing the notion about, is it right to segment a product for men and for women, whether it's cars, whether it's a ball pen, whether it's beer. And you'll find, and this will be a great topic for your students, exceptions to the rule, that maybe it's better not to segment, because here in Korea, I used to always say there are more similar people than dissimilar people. That has changed. So now in Korea, there is increasingly more segmentation. But before, because Korea is a very collective society, we didn't need to segment. But that implication, very ironically, is now happening in the West, where, for example, Heineken, just to give you an example, I love Heineken. I used to love their gender-specific ad, such as men loving football. So they used to have, during the Champions League, something targeted especially to men. And they have also this legendary ad. You can YouTube Heineken and the refrigerator ad, which is where they're kind of mocking. You know that ad.
Yes.
Where there's nothing but Heineken in the refrigerator. The men are screaming like the woman next door screaming about their shoe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's my all-time favorite Heineken ads. But check out their most recent ad, which is very gender neutral. Oh, you'll love it, because in that ad, they're tackling all the gender stereotypes that people have about women drinking cocktail and only the macho man drinking Heineken. In that ad, only the women drink Heineken. So when the waiter comes with the Heineken and the cocktail, and he serves the woman the cocktail and the man the Heineken, the woman just gives him that cold stare and switches the two drinks. So again, it's not beer, but it could be toys, of course. So in the States, girls don't play with pink toys anymore. They want something which is gender neutral. So it used to be men would get all the blue toys, and the girls would get all the pink toys. In fact, a lot of stores have discarded girls and boys sections. So they have to buy in the same sections.
Okay.
The toys are like that. I think maybe even cars will get into that act, because we know a lot of the SUVs are actually driven by women.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
because
nowadays,
they have children. Yeah. And the small minis, they're driven by men.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Even
and
Lamborghini has an
yeah,
SUV and
yeah,
Porsche, and
yeah,
so
yeah,
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 absolutely,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And of course cosmetics. So a lot of cosmetic brands, the niche brand, they're all gender neutral. Neutral.
Mhm.
And there's a brand, in fact, called We Are Fluid. What a name
Okay.
for a gender neutral cosmetic brand. We Are Fluid with one E at the end. So it's FLUIDE.
Okay.
And so they don't specify who it's for. It's unisex. Men can use it, women can
Mhm.
use it. And from a cost standpoint, you save
Mhm.
tons. So you don't have to make a men's
Absolutely.
line, women's line. Yeah.
Yeah, you're expanding the market in one way or
Yeah.
another,
Yeah.
at least twice. And even, for example, I have been reading a neuromarketing finding that for me was really interesting because looks like blue, talking about colors, blue is the favorite color for men, but also for women. So
There you
it's,
go.
yeah. So
Yeah.
imagine that we don't use, in this case, for example, neuromarketing to analyze these kind of aspects.
Yeah.
So, and even there are another components that we could find very interesting. For example, looks like orange is a color that women doesn't like so much. And
Yeah.
and I make that a test with some of my students, and
Yeah.
many women dislike orange color.
Mm.
So it's interesting because we could suppose that warm colors are more likely for women, and
Right.
you know,
Right.
dark
Right.
colors or for men.
Yeah.
But that's
No,
why
women
we
love black. Black is like the
yes,
chicest color. Yeah.
yes,
The new
yes,
black. Everything is the new black. Yeah.
yes. So that's a lot of research in background there.
Yeah.
So thanks to share about it, Professor. And I have a final question because
Sure.
I want to know your approach on this. But do you see, for example, digital transformation as a kind of backbone element for the upcoming marketing strategies?
Especially in the post-pandemic age,
Mhm.
the digital transformation. But just again, to come back to what um, Amazon is doing, it's surprising that, as you know, it's well known that they have actually a heavy offline presence. So I think the key when we analyze digital transformation is we can't leave out the customer journey. So the
Absolutely.
customer journey will ultimately tell you how much of that uh, whole journey should consist of an online component and an offline component. So, so I think ultimately it's almost like my argument about B2B to C. There is no B2B and B2C. It's artificial because every B2B ends with a C.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we have to think about that last C. I think where a lot of B2B companies fail is because by not looking at what happened at the very last interface, they close themselves to what opportunities there might be, sometimes to go direct to the consumer. And that's where even in B2B to C, they could do that digitally. They don't necessarily have to do that. Dell, as you know, it was all online, even
Yes.
though it was B2C.
Yes.
But it
And
requires a different set of capabilities, such as offshooting or troubleshooting what the consumer has difficulties with, having a good call center, so on and so on. So it's, again, we've come full circle. It's about distribution, but even in
yes,
a digital sense. So
absolutely.
my general answer to that would be, I don't think I should pinpoint any specific company, but some obvious one comes to mind, such as uh, Amazon, but Apple, Samsung, even though they might be more offline, especially because of the pandemic and
Mhm.
the kind of cocooning that people have done, myself included, trying to do everything online. I think the customer journey will be key because it will be about what's still missing. I can do a lot of things online,
Mhm.
but maybe I want to touch the phone before I actually buy it. And that's
Yes.
why Amazon has set up these stores
Mhm.
offline where you can see the book, even though you're not buying it, read a couple
Yes.
of pages, or maybe touch, because the tactile, it's almost like my movie where you want to use multi-sensory interfacing.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you want to, I'm using a MacBook. You want to see how big it is, how heavy it is. That's
Yes.
something you can tell them how much it weighs, but still, uh, it's
Yeah.
very abstract.
Yeah. No matter that they could be like showrooms instead of just
Yeah,
stores. But
yeah,
yeah, you're right.
yeah,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
the same situation used to happen with a lot of devices that we,
yeah,
and you could see a lot of people that maybe still prefer that in-person
yeah. And I would
interaction.
imagine it's even more important than B2B.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
The demonstration of the heavy equipment
Mhm.
thing that how noisy it is and so on. We know noise is very different from hearing it
Yes.
on your PC versus hearing it live. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And
Professor.
cars also, because
Yeah.
I'm a big car buff, and
Mhm.
not being able to test drive something.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yes.
even though you may have driven an older model,
Mhm.
the newer model, I think the issue with cars in the future will be sound. And sound is something which is really underrated as a sensory stimulus.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because as a filmmaker, I know I pay almost the most attention to sound, especially if you see a movie inside a movie theater. What really gets you into the movie is the sound.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and the same with cars.
Mhm.
Cars is really about the sound that the car makes. I mean, you may be driving a sports car, but oftentimes you're driving it in the city. So you can't speed the car, but you can still make the sound. You still
Yes.
get the experience uh,
Absolutely.
of the car, even though you're driving it at 40 miles an hour. And
Yes.
people notice, and that's part of the thrill of driving a sports car, the looks that you get from the other cars and or the passersby.
Yeah, because it's more about the experience.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, I used to mention also to my students, and I also try to make in practice that even jingles are an important component,
Oh yeah.
as you mentioned.
Oh,
And sometimes are very, as you mentioned, underrated, but for sure are
no,
very
absolutely.
are key components, because it is easier for us as humans to
Yeah,
remember a jingle than
yeah.
an entire campaign of a company or something.
Right, and I'm sure there's research on this, but even from a cost standpoint,
Mhm. Yes.
repetition, as you know, in advertising is needed to get over that threshold of people memorizing
Mhm.
a message of an ad.
Yes.
To do it with television costs money because to get um, an average of 3 repetition, you'll probably have to do it like over 10 times, which is very
Mhm.
expensive. But you can do it with radio. You can do it with jingles on radio.
Yes.
which will cost far less, but still get you
Totally.
the similar amount of frequency,
Mhm.
repetition.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that there are plenty of topics that we could continue talking, but I really want to thank you, Professor Chang, for your time.
No
And,
hay de qué.
and for sure, please remember that you have a friend here in Monterey. So if
Okay.
you come here, more than welcome.
Okay.
And I don't know if you have any final comment before we finish this very interesting conversation.
Yeah, I just wanted to plug my Coursera courses
Sure.
once again. And they depending on the institution, you can take it for free. And I also
Yes.
have a course in Spanish. I haven't spoken Spanish in quite a while, but nonetheless, in that video, I do speak it in Spanish. And
Very well, by the way.
Really?
You
Excuse me?
speak very well Spanish
Okay, thank you.
in the Marketing Asia
Thank you.
course.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I just want to tell your viewers that marketing is a never-ending quest. And I think that's what makes marketing such not only a fun topic, but also a difficult one, because you always have to keep on going. And I kid my accounting colleagues, my finance colleagues, and tell them, you can teach that same stuff from 20 years back. I can't do that. I can't do that. So I hope as a marketer, you A, have curiosity, and B, challenge yourself to learn something new about what's changing. And that will be what makes marketing, again, fun.
Yeah, that's the key of this, and for sure, I will embrace that spirit too, and yeah. So thank you so much again.
Okay.
So have a very good day in.
You too.
Are you in Seoul?
Oh, I am in Seoul, yes.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Professor.
Okay.
I really
Okay.
appreciate it.
Okay, adios.
Adios. Give us a like about this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again and see you soon.